Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor Kulbhushan Chandel from Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla. Today we are going to talk on module Setting the Change from paper organizational change and development. Let me just discuss that what we are going to know from this module. We will be studying the creation of the need for change. We will be learning through this module about the building of the coalition and alliance teams. We will be understanding clarifications of the change process. We will be studying the elements of the contract. We will be understanding the communication process in change. Let me introduce the topic first. To create a sense of urgency to change, a large number of organizations members must recognize that the status quo is no longer acceptable. As members assemble and recognize that change must occur, then a coalition form is required. They also become more concerned about the need for the organizations to change. They often form a stronger association. In synergistic fashion, each step fosters the development of the other. Similarly, and as organization members struggle with clarifying the change mandate, a stronger alliance is often forged, and members recognize even more that there is an urgent need to change because the model is not linear. Decisions made at the later steps often require that the earlier steps be revisited. For example, during the planning stage, it could be possible that the major stakeholders had been left out of the alliance building process, and then the team may need the identification of the additional strategies in obtaining the support of the stakeholders. Change management is an iterative process that leaders need to constantly review and revise. Thus, it is significant to know that the process is also a developmental one, and each step is based on the previous step. There could also be short-sighted view which could be followed by the manager, in that the manager can skip the earlier steps and can move on. There are flaws in this approach. This model works best when the change initiatives are organized into projects with clearly defined start and finish dates. When the change goals are too diffuse and the time frame goes on indefinitely, then it is difficult to mobilize the efforts of organizational members. Some researchers and authors have stated that it is best to organize change efforts as time-limited activities aimed at a defined final product in the managerial processes. The steps of the setting the system for change are creating the urgency to change, building an alliance for change, and clarifying the change imperative. The details of all these can be given as under. Creating the urgency to change. For bringing the change in the organization, there is requirement of cooperation, commitment of time and energy, and willingness to make the sacrifices. For obtaining this commitment, The leaders must convince the organization members that there is urgency to change. Unfortunately, the leaders often overlook this essential step in the change process. They do not recognize the need to create the sense of dissatisfaction with the status quo, and they fully understand that this is the first step and which is necessary in breaking down the organization indifference. Change is disruptive to organizations, and it is also unsettling approach rather for leaders and painful for members. There is enormous amount of momentum needed for moving the change efforts forward. The urgency to change becomes the energy that propels the organization ahead, and without the energy, the change discharges and ultimately dies for a lack of interest. Many times, this step is skipped by the leaders and they move on the next steps of planning and implementation. This is especially true when there are political pressures to perform or to implement a new program. Due to the result of the past experiences of the organizational change, many organizations are doubtful of the change processes and have also witnessed the great deal of discussion about the change without the great deal of action towards change. Thus, any processes that are not perceived directly related to the accomplishment are believed. Contentment within the organization. Without urgency, there is often contentment in the organizations and are not immune to the tendencies and public health service agencies, given their bureaucratic nature. Organizations are complacent as opposed to superficial changes in structure, and processes becomes difficult. Following are some of the insights. Kotler in 1966 has incited various factors which helps us in understanding the reason for contentment in organizations for change. There may be no visible crisis in the organization. It means that there is possibility that there might be no apparent financial struggles, layoffs are not impending, no major lawsuits are evident, or there is no major negative publicity. For many years, human service agencies have sheltered from the types of crises that have faced private sector organizations. But more and more human service organizations are facing the same type of challenges as being faced by the private sector organizations in adapting to change. There may be too many visible resources within the organization. For example, there may be ample funds for travel, conferences, and some spoken messages. In contrast to this, as we are doing fine, why we need to change might portray some other images. The standard against which the organization is measured might be low. Many times the leaders set realistic and attainable goals, and the organization is capable of being successful by those standards. But if the benchmark set is low, then there might some problem with the standard achievements also. Setting up of the performance standard is an emerging area for the organizations as they are increasingly becoming an exception. Organizations might focus on the narrow functional or departmental goals rather than focusing on the broad strategic goals. Members can see their departmental goals to be more important than organizational goals. In many organizations, the director have the overall responsibility of the achievement of the organizational goal, but when the departments are following their own goals, then in such situations, the non-achievements of the goals of the organization is not solely the responsibility of the director, rather it is responsibility of the departments too. In many organizations, there is lack of feedback from the external stakeholders, internal resources, or both. It is possible that the management can go for a long time period without having any feedback from the organization and from stakeholders. Then in such situation, it is easy for the leaders to become narrow-minded. One of the main tasks of successful change is to bring focus on the identification of the needs and wishes of the customers. Many organizations have also developed the low confrontations culture. In these organizations, the truth is not valued if it is negative, and the truth speaker is also seen as troublemaker. Some studies have shown that the good news travel up in the hierarchy faster than the bad news. Many leaders have a natural propensity to downplay problems and emphasize only what is working in the organization. In complacent environment, organizational change needs bold action, and this is challenging task in case of bureaucratic organizations. In addition, for leaders who are accustomed to bring in control, the bold action is quite risky. Ways or manners of increasing urgency level. Kotler in 1996 offered helpful suggestions on how leaders can increase the urgency level of the organizational change setting. Some of the similar ideas and suggestions can be that the crisis should not be covered up. Rather, there should be creation of sharing of information about the overrun budget, and the organizational member must be exposed with the poor performance data. Although this is scary for the organization leaders, but it must be done by the managers and leaders. The standard should be set high so that the organization could not achieve the goals by just conducting the business as usual. So if the standards are set high, then the departments will try to change its way of functioning to achieve, and the clients and customers would be better served. There should be more distribution of information among the employees, especially information with regard to the level of satisfaction and dissatisfaction among the client and customers. This would help the organization to be more responsive towards the customers. Thus, it will help in reducing the level of dissatisfaction among the customers. The emphasis should be made on the regular interaction with the dissatisfied stakeholders. There should be regular interaction with the employees with regard to their opinion and uses of information in order to create urgency among the managers for change. The managers must be willing to educate supervisors and employees about the dangers of organizations remaining complacent and stagnant. Kotler stated that the role of leaders in creation of urgency to change is very important. It is incorrect to assume that only leaders can generate organization change. There are numerous causes within the organization which are responsible for bringing the change in the organization. For the staff members who are not in leadership, it is difficult for them to change. Drivers for change. Before starting any change project, the organization's leaders can invite staff members to identify those external and internal forces that are propelling the organizations to change. Some of the reasons for the external change are the demographic profile, which has changed. The expectations of the community have increased with respect to the service integration and coordination. The directors want their departments to function more cohesively. Some of the internal reasons for the change are lack of cooperation and coordination among various departments, visible walls between management and staff, need for change as asked by the departmental head, and need for more line and staff participations. Building coalition for change. Change can be initiated at any level and by anyone, like it can be initiated by workers, managers, directors, regardless of the changes which can be brought in the organization. The individual never bring change by themselves. There is need of support of many people in bringing the successful change in the organizations. Even for a small level of change in the organizations, the team offers greater assurance that change will be well planned, and once the change is planned, it will be implemented. Like in human service organizations, there are large group of people comprising of committees, task forces who study problems and make recommendations to the top management. Although some of these groups have made major contributions to the organizations, even then many fail to do so. Factors contributing to the success. There are numerous factors that contribute towards the success of bringing change in the organizations. Some of them are that the team should comprise of members who have functional representative across departments, who are open-minded and highly motivated and represent the end users, as suggested by Kotler, that the members of the successful coalition team must have position manpower, expertise, and credibility. And then a skilled team leader in a position of authority is also a key factor. The leader of cross-functional teams need to be skilled and trained in a group leadership skill due to the reason that individual has positional power within the organization. The team must have both the authority and accountability to accomplish the task. The cross-functional teams are important to clearly identify the shared goals of the group and to clarify the team's authority to make decisions. There must be upper level management support and involvement as well as adequate resources for them. Organizational support and involvement as well as adequate resources for the team. It includes offering the work time to members working in cross-functional teams involving immediate supervisors in supporting the active participation of direct reports and many more. Adequate internal and external communication system must exist. Clarifying the change imperatives. After the coalition team has convened, it must collectively clarify the nature of the change which is imperative. Too frequently, a team will embark on a project without having clarity about the nature of its authority, the anticipated outcomes from the project, or the resources needed. Besides, members also proceed without developing the shared vision for the changed effort. Even sometimes the members proceed with their own agenda and later they found out that they and the key decision makers had different viewpoints on the project. The research which was conducted by Schiffers in 1987 suggested that the change agents work in collaboration with the key decision makers of the organization to clearly identify the decision makers' intentions as well as the constraints imposed on the process. Even if the decision makers are not clear about the results, it proves to be helpful to the process it as well. Schiffer has also offered a series of questions which can be clarified in written contracts between the change agents and the key decision makers. The questions related to the authority that is implementing it, official status of the project to be established, effect of the change, outcomes expected out of the change, funding limits and resources to be used for the projects. Following functions are valuable in the change management process. Creates clarity. It includes the contract which creates clarity, which includes contracting and helping the team members to organizations their thoughts about the project and focuses their attentions and energy by minimizing the wasted time and resources. Then it is improved communication. Other people, they are important to the project, and contracting provides a base for communication with others who may be involved in the project and who may be affected by them. Then provides direction for the project. Contracting includes setting the direction for the project. Each member of the project team needs a clear sense of a starting point where the project will go and how to get there. Identifies measurements. Effective contracting comprises of determining the outcomes for the project with a clear sense of the results desired. The project team members can know when they achieve the purpose of the project. Then it comes improves chances of for the success. Chances of the success of the project. Success can occur because contracting clarifies the objectives, places limits on the scope of the project, and realistically allocates time and other resources. Elements of contract. Once the elements of the contract are established, the alliance team will get the clear understanding of the nature of the change project. The main elements of the contracts are the problem identification. This provides a brief overview of the problem which the team is going to solve. The benchmark is set in this step. The team should consider the problem as from system perspective so that the root cause of the problem could be studied. Purpose statement. The purpose is a general statement of the solution to the problem or issue previously identified. It generally provides the overview of the project. Then it is vision statement. Although vision definition provides information about the objective, but it also helps in creating a picture of the future that helps and clarify the general direction for change. It also helps in motivating the organization member. Then it's the outcomes. In outcomes, the alliance team will identify the measurable outcomes. Then it comes evaluation. The alliance team will identify the sources from where the data will be gathered in accomplishment of the objective. The team will have the means to measure the degree of change from before to after implementation of the project. Then the resources. The team must identify the resources needed for the project implementation. It will comprise of detailed information about the material, money, information, space, people, and all other needs. Then finally, it is the mandate of the team. In this section, the issue of authority is addressed. The team will have the authority to implement the solution it devises. It is better to address this issue before the team proceeds. Communication during this stage. Communication is an underlying theme throughout the change management process. As suggested by Galpin in 1996, that there are numerous communication phases during the change effort, two of which are relevant in this stage of change management process. The first involves the building of awareness or creating a sense of urgency. The team should address the issue of this is why we need to change. The purpose of this phase is to identify the need and opportunity for the change and provides the information with regard of the process, including the opportunities for involvement, and announces the senior level support for the project. And the second one begins with the beginning of the project and is addressed as this is where we are going. At this team, the team must communicate the vision of the change so that the members could get the clear picture of the change. The information should relate to why the change is made and with which process the change will be implemented. Let's summarize what we have learned in this module. For bringing the change in the organization, there is a requirement of the cooperation, commitment of time and energy, and willingness to make the sacrifice. For obtaining this commitment, the leaders must convince the organization members that there is urgency to change. Unfortunately, the leaders often overlook this essential step in the change process. They do not recognize the need to create the sense of dissatisfaction with the status quo, and they fully understand that this is the first step and which is necessary in breaking down the organization indifference. Change is disruptive to organizations, and it is also unsettling approach for leaders and painful for members. There is enormous amount of momentum needed for moving the change efforts forward. The urgency to change becomes the energy that people, the organization ahead, and without the energy, the change discharges and ultimately dies for a lack of interest. Many times, this step is skipped by the leaders and they move on to the next steps of planning and implementation. This is especially true when there are political pressures to perform or to implement a new program. Due to the result of the past experiences of the organizational change, many organizations are doubtful of the change processes and have also witnessed the great deal of discussion about the change without the great deal of action towards change. Thus, any process that is not perceived directly and related to the accomplishments, they are to be believed. Without urgency, there is often contentment in the organization which are not immune to this tendency and public health services given their bureaucratic nature. organizations are complacent as opposed to the superficial changes in structure and processes, which becomes difficult. Change can be initiated at any level and by anyone, like it can be initiated by workers, managers, directors. Regardless of the changes which can be brought in the organization, the individual never bring change by themselves. There is a need of the support of many people in bringing the successful change in the organizations. Even for a small level of change in the organizations, the team offers greater assurance that change will be well planned, and once the change is planned, it will be implemented. Like in human service organizations, there are large group of people comprising of committees, task forces, who study problems and make recommendations to the top management. Although some of these groups have made major contributions to the organizations, even then many fails to do. The team must communicate the vision of the change so that the members could get the clear picture of the change. The information should relate to why the change is made and with which process the change will be implemented. Thank you.